I was drinking every day. I was smoking marijuana every day. And it escalated to me now smoking PCP mixed with marijuana. So I didn't care. I really didn't have a purpose anymore. I caught a crime. I was walking through my neighborhood on the way to the liquor store, and we encountered my victims, the Bell brothers. Being a bully, using bully tactics, I engaged into a fight with them.
Hi, Roosevelt. Thank you so much for being on Between the Lines podcast. It's really nice to have you. Thank you for your time. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So I just want to get to know about you and your journey and how you grew up and where you're from first and foremost.
Okay, my name's Roosevelt Wooten Jr. I was born November 9th, 1980, in Riverside, California. I come from a mother and father that was, my mother's Native American, my father's black. So I came from a biracial household. I have 7 siblings. I grew up in the Riverside area and bounced around to Lake Elsinore, California, Rubidoux, California, and things of that nature.
And what was your childhood like?
My childhood, as far back as I can remember, was what I call fair, decent, up until the age of about 12 and 13. I consider myself, I came from a loving family, a loving mother, a loving father, my siblings. But as I got older, I started experiencing things within my household that were not normal, such as my father's infidelity with my mother, and ultimately my mother leaving the household. Instead of my father leaving, my mother left. So she left me and my siblings with my father.
And how old were you during this
I
time?
was 13 at the time, going on 14.
How did that impact you? How was that first experience of your mom leaving? What can you explain a little bit about how you felt and how that happened?
Um, I started to become angry because I had to take on the role of a mother and father figure at a young age. My father took my mother's separation very hard. He resorted to drugs and alcohol, so he wasn't home much. I stayed home with my siblings. My youngest brother, Isaiah Wooten, who is currently a lifer inmate and my cellie at this moment, he was also raised in that household, but it made me feel anger. It made me resentful towards my mother and my father for putting us in a position like that.
And how did you raised your brother then?
Yes, for the most part.
And did you have to work when you were 13, 14, 15, or how did you have money to like how was that lifestyle for you?
Well, growing up, I didn't work. I just I got by. You know, my father would do odd jobs. He would be in and out the home, so he would make sure that the rent was paid, and he would give me money to buy food. But some of the times that we would run out of food, I would steal from the store. I would, you know, go steal food just to feed my siblings. You know, make sure my siblings were fed.
Wow, that's a big responsibility to have. And you said that you started to harbor anger. How did that show in your life during that time?
Um, by the age of 15, going into 15, I was started hanging out more. I started hanging with the local street gang more. My house was never a hangout house when my mother was home. So once she departed from the household, my house became the hangout spot because I didn't have no parental guidance. Nobody told me what to do. So I basically done what I wanted to do, including having gang members and drug dealers and all of those things present at my home
And this is at 15 years old.
at 15 years
So
old.
would you say this is like the beginning of the journey that you've been on,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so when your mom left, did she just leave and not come back? Did she reach out to you guys? Did you have a communication?
Well, the way that went was one day she called us all in her room and explained to us that she was leaving the household. She was divorcing my father, and we had a choice to leave with her or stay with my father. And she moved to the next street over with one of her friends. So she was just down the street, a street over. And we all made the determination. We were all heartbroken, all of us, me and all my siblings. So based on we all grew up together in the same household, we made a choice to stay together and not split up from each other. So it was me, my youngest brother Isaiah, my sister Juanita, and my sister Tamika, who is deaf. She can't speak or hear, so she's fully mute. So we were stuck in the household, us four.
And you were the one guiding them. You were the one leading
Yes,
the way at the same time.
yes. But at that time, I didn't know or understand how I was leading them in the wrong way because I didn't know any better. And then my sister that's mute, I had to learn American Sign Language to communicate with my sister. That was the only way I could communicate with my sister. So it was a lot going on at that time.
That's a lot going on. And so you've been here in the system since 1998, you said.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here and how that was?
Well, when I was 15, I was caught up in a gang shooting. I got a slap on my hand, what they call it. I was a juvenile offender. I went to a Twin Pines Ranch Boys boot camp for about 7, 8 months after juvenile hall. I graduated the program and I returned home at the age of 16. After that, I was only home for 53 days and I was back into the cycle of gang activity. I was back in the cycle of drinking. I was back in the cycle of using marijuana. So for those 53 days, I incurred 2 more charges, but these charges were life crime charges.
Really quickly, before I get into life crime charges, what made you want to be part of a gang? How does a kid get involved with the gang life?
Well, it wasn't so much that I wanted to get involved into it. It was just that it was there, and I was seeking that love and that acceptance that we no longer had in my household because the love and the encouragement from my parents was no longer there. Like growing up, my parents weren't the type to say, "Hey, we love you. Have a good day at school." It wasn't that kind of childhood growing up. So when my mother chose to leave, it was like I was exposed to the world, and I felt like I had the world on my shoulders. So it became a normalized thing for me.
And having the gang, the team, their family was like having the love that you thought was love,
Yes,
and that you wanted to be part of. And so
yes,
that led to the 2 crimes that you committed. Which, do you
yes.
mind touching base on what happened?
Well, I got home in 96, 96, 97. And I got out of Twin Pines Ranch boot camp February 4th of 98. I came home. And I was back in, the first day at home, I went into the refrigerator and got a 32 ounce of Old English 800. I returned back to my normalized behavior. My father was there. I had a probation officer. I didn't do what the probation told me to do. I didn't go back to school. I was just hanging out. I was just within the negative influences of my neighborhood. And ultimately, I was drinking every day. I was smoking marijuana every day. And it escalated to me now smoking PCP mixed with marijuana and Sherm. We started smoking Sherm, and that's when I became more vulnerable to things. That's when I became more open to trying dangerous stuff, more dangerous things. I didn't care. I really didn't have a purpose anymore. So February 16th, I was arrested. I caught a crime, attempted murder. I was walking through my neighborhood on the way to the liquor store to get more alcohol. It was me, two of my cousins, and a friend. And we encountered my victims, the Bell brothers. And being a bully, using bully tactics, I engaged into a fight with them.
Just for no reason, really?
Just being a bully, a neighborhood bully, just not having a sense of direction, just really being callous, no kind of self-control, impulsivity. All of those things led me to ultimately stab Daniel Bell that night and almost killing him. And After that crime was committed, I went on a semi-run from the cops to avoid the police, and March 31st, 1998, I ultimately picked up another crime, which was the attempted premeditation murder of my victim, Mr. Mike Simonian. And
What does premeditation murder mean?
they charged me with the premeditation because they said that I plotted and planned it, and I didn't execute it. So it was a premeditated attempted murder. I meant to kill him, but he just didn't die.
And I mean, is it something that the gang is a normal thing in a gang life to kill people? Is it part of initiation, or is it something that is like, what is the incentive? Is it money? I'm just curious.
Well, my crimes, it was just being a general bully with Daniel and Gabriel Bell. And the attempted murder of Mike Simonian, I was misled into believing some things. Come to find out that my father was actually having an affair with Mr. Simonian's wife. And, you know, when I got arrested, a lot of lies were told. The reasons for attempting to kill him and all of these things, but it was fabricated. I came clean. I took responsibility. I demonstrated my remorse. And those types of things just, at the end of the day, when I look back at it now, there was absolutely no reason to do what I done when you get to the bottom of it. But before I could get to that point in my life, I had to peel back those layers of my defects and my causative factors and growing up the way I did and understanding that I was a hurt person. So it was easy for me to hurt people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been here since 1998, and I mean, the man that's standing before me, you seem, so at peace and so confident in who you are, and owning your mistakes and growing from them. Tell me about what has impacted you the most being here for, what is it, 27 years? 27 years.
Yeah.
How was your start of it? Was there a moment that broke you, that made you realize, like, I don't want to be this person anymore? And how you've evolved since walking in when you were 18 years old?
Yeah. I was arrested at 17, spent time in juvenile hall. On my 18th birthday, I was transferred over to Riverside County Jail. During my trial, I incurred another charge of assault with a deadly weapon when I struck a man by the name of Frayne in the face, and I broke his face, his
During the
cheekbone.
trial?
During my trial. I was ultimately charged again, and I picked up 6 more years for that crime inside, and that was at the age of 19. Again, I was calloused, I was a gang member, I was a bully, I was a follower, and I had no sense of direction. And understanding that I was facing life in prison, I didn't have no hope.
What's the point?
It was like, I'm gonna die in prison anyway. And that was the beginning of like, those type of situations that were happening with me were just solidifying my callous behavior, my negativity, my criminal gang lifestyle. And I was always trying to prove myself.
Even while you were in here at the beginning, you were
At the
still
beginning.
continuing that lifestyle.
Yes, I continued that lifestyle for many years. It wasn't until 2014 that a seed was planted for me to change. And that seed came about when me and a close friend had a fight on the yard behind prison politics, behind something that was created within us, you know, and this was a person that I loved like a brother, grew up together. Like, you know, they say the sandbox days before you start banging and all of those things. And me and him had a fallout over things that occurred in here. And that sparked my interest into change because the belief system, I felt like for me and him to ever have a fight or ever get into it, what I'm believing in is wrong. And that's when the seed was planted. But I didn't ultimately start making my change. By 2015, I started to slowly distance myself from certain people.
You were aware that you weren't feeling right. Like
Yes.
the things that you were doing weren't feeling right in your soul. And so it was like
No.
the beginning of this journey of reform, right?
Yes. And it took a while. It took a while. I would come out. Um, 2015, I had a consultation. They notified me that I was a youth offender lifer, and I had a parole hearing coming in 2017. So from 2014, which was my last one, 15, up until a recent one, it was like I started programming. I was no longer hanging out on the yard. By 2017, I was no longer having a say-so or an opinion into any kind of negative behavior, and I was ultimately trying to do the right thing. I got back into school um, in 2018. I got back into school. I went to the board. This is how it happened. I went to the board in 2017, and that was my 20th year in prison. And they said that I was eligible for parole, so I appeared. At that time, I feel like, hey, I'm no longer fighting on the yard. I'm no longer involved in certain things on the yard. So, hey, I have a chance to go before parole. But I still had criminal thinking lingering. You know what I mean?
And what does that mean, criminal thinking?
Just the criminal thoughts coming into mind, thinking that I could get away with certain things, such as like using phones and just still, you know,
Not
not
acting right.
having my integrity fully intact. I was comparing. I was still in denial. So ultimately, my first board hearing, I thought if I didn't get found suitable, I would at least get a 3-year denial. I walked out of there with a 5-year denial because majority of my past in prison. That was a eye opener for me, and I knew that if I ever wanted to get out of prison, I had to ultimately change.
You have to go all in.
I had
You
to
can't
go
have one foot in,
exactly.
no lukewarm in
No.
anything that you do.
I
Yeah.
was no straddling the fence. I couldn't be going to church on Monday through Friday, then on the weekends hanging out. It was all or nothing. So it wasn't like I just went to people and said, hey, I'm changing today. Today I'm going to change. I started doing it with my behavior. I started not engaging in certain things that was going on around me. I started with my self-help groups. The board denied me and told me to go take certain classes such as Victims Impact. That was a very big group that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. Victim Impact and giving life back to lifers. Victims Impact was Mothers with a Message. And they were these mothers who came back in to share their story about their children who had been murdered due to gang violence or drunken driving. And it registered with me in like a way that I can't even explain. And those things touch me at my core because for many years, I had this pride and this ego that I'm never gonna call myself a victim. And I struggled with a lot of things that went on, and that opened my eyes to know that I was a victim, along with my family being a victim, when my brother Mario was murdered at the age of 27 in 2003. And that right
How
there,
was he murdered?
he was murdered by another individual who it had to do with gang stuff and drugs. And they just pulled up on my brother and they shot my brother 6 times in his back. 1 in the back of the head and 5 in the back. And what's crazy about that story is my sister Tamika, who I share with you, that's mute. My brother walked about 3 blocks, shot up. And I guess as he was walking, one of the bullets penetrated his heart from the back. So when he arrived at my sister's front door, he knocked on the door. My sister came to the door, and he died right there. Yeah. So, but
And so
those are the
that was a
things.
moment where you
Yeah.
were on the other side
Yeah.
of it that
Yeah.
impacted you so much.
Yeah. And I just knew that I had to change. In order for me to make it out of prison, I had to become that change. You know, I could no longer harm or hurt people anymore, victimize people anymore. You know, doing things to create more victims.
And how did you change? What did you do? What groups were you in other than the victimization? But like, how did you put the work into yourself? Was there a mentor you had, a person that helped you, a group that you went to? How can people, that are watching you also learn from this?
I learned from other lifers that were in my shoes at one point in time, that were older than me, that had been locked up for many years, that were making the change. They became my support system. And, I was hanging around them now. I was going to self-help, um, giving life back to lifers, victims impact. Once I took that first group, I ultimately became the facilitator of victims impact for the next 3 sessions. So now I started to work on myself and understand that I was a victim, but I didn't want to place the blame. You know what I mean? In terms of like playing the victim role, but actually understanding how I was victimized and owning it, because it was something that happened to me and my family. I had to put the ego and the pride to the side and ultimately own my traumas, and I started delving into many other groups, such as the Actors Gang Prison Project, which taught me about my 4 natural emotions, my happy, angry, sad, and afraid, and how to channel my emotions, and how to manage my anger, and how to acknowledge my fears, and just the whole group dynamics in itself. That was a pilot program that entered into Calipatria General Population Yard. They wanted to send it to another yard, but I believe the warden introduced it into this yard when this yard was one of the worst level 4 yards in California. And we started off with 32 participants.
So you became part of the Actors Game Prison Project. Can you
Yes.
tell me who started that, or what did that entail?
Well, it was brought into the institution by the actor by the name of Tim Robbins. We did a 7-day hell week, and ultimately we introduced a group to this yard. It deals with all kind of crazy stuff. It's not like acting, but you're just using the stock of like, it's from the 1800s, and it's about like how the poor would dress up and become these individuals to make fun of the rich. So in identifying the 4 natural emotions that it's created for, it teaches you just basically how to deal with those natural emotions, dressing up, putting a mask on, because being in prison for so long, you create this mask, or growing up, you create this mask, criminal, gang member, negative person, whatever it is. And you put this mask on and you act out in these characters. These characters have their own little dynamics about themselves, but you're able to channel your emotions through these characters. And since it started 2017, this yard was a level 4 yard. Ultimately, it dropped down and became a level 3 yard. So as it was dropping down, my programming afforded me to drop down. So I dropped down from a level 4 incarcerated person to a level 3, and then about a year and some change ago, it became a level 2. So now I'm a level 2 incarcerated individual with 25 points.
That's incredible. So I didn't know that you could go down in the levels.
Yes.
And that comes with like behavior and the things you do
Yes.
here. So what are some things that you did that got you to level 2?
First and foremost was staying out of trouble, positively programming, being pro-social, becoming a pillar of my community in the self-help program on these yards, taking my rehabilitation serious. And it started at Calipat, because I started in High Desert State Prison level 4, ultimately transferring out to Centinela level 4 institution, and then Calipatria level 4 until it became a 3 to a 2. So a lot of my transformation, well, my ultimate transformation was done here. I have chronos from staff identifying how negative I was. I was a program failure. I was always getting in trouble. I had no regards for the law. I had no remorse. I had no empathy for others. I was just a selfish individual. But identifying those things in myself and finding that change, I began to utilize my spiritual principles and replace those old character defects. And ultimately, my rehabilitation took its turn for the better. And I started facilitating groups. I became a part of the Criminal Gang Members Anonymous groups. Actors Gang Prison Project, which is still presently being ran on this yard. I'm the original member of that group, still on this yard. Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm in recovery since June 9th, 2013. So just a lot of different things. My self-help programs that ultimately started here. You know, I took advantage of everything they had to offer when it came to rehabilitation. I got my GED, went on further to get in the college program, and ultimately I graduated from Imperial Valley College with my associate's degree in sociology.
That is so incredible. I am so impressed. I am so proud of you. Like, this is, you beat all odds.
Yes.
And you did it, you took every step the proper
Yes.
way. And you took initiation into the better future. And like a lot of people that I've spoken to, they get saved by Jesus and like that was their way out. But like you haven't really mentioned that you did things in a very like like, you know, in a way that it's like people can do it. That doesn't have to be just about God either. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like some people, they hear God. I'm a big woman of faith, and they're like, oh, maybe some people maybe not believe in it. But then some people could use literally the pathway and the guideline that you're doing, which is like doing the work from the bottom up.
Yes.
Which is a hard way to do it.
And when it comes to like God, I believe. You know, growing up, my mother structured us with the belief of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was never baptized, but I still had that belief. So there were still things that I believed in. But once I started getting older and I became the gang member I was, and I really cursed God a lot when my brother was murdered. Like me and God didn't have a relationship no more. I was housed in High Desert, level 4, 180 yard, where the violence was at its max. It was at its peak. I was 23 years old, and I didn't have no hope for the future. I honestly believed I was going to die in prison. So I didn't really go to God. I really didn't ask God for help no more because I felt all the asking I was doing, my brother was just murdered. And I blamed. But ultimately coming back into the belief and going back to my Bible studies and getting myself back right with God and asking God for that forgiveness, I'm not a holier than thou, but I do believe. And by me believing, I believe it had a very big impact on keeping me safe in here, on keeping me focused on my change, understanding that He is my higher power and I need Him to get through things that I'm going through.
Yeah,
So I've rekindled that relationship with God.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And for the kids, I mean, you are just such an inspirational example of somebody who, you know, started from not a good environment and has made their way to success in the confines of this prison. But for kids that are right now in the position that you are, maybe they're in gangs and they don't know better and they have no incentive to do what they're doing, but they're just doing it. What words do you have for them?
Man, I have many, but just to be straight to the point, don't believe everything you hear. Only believe what you see. And I say that in terms of, I know we grew up in a gang lifestyle of the belief system, but when you get to the whole dynamics of the belief system and you're able to go back, and if it doesn't check out as truth, then it's not true, you know? And I look at it like, don't be so quick to be a follower or just believe anything, because that's how I was my whole life. And until I started having these breaking points in my life and looking back on what I was believing in, it just made me understand that this wasn't who I was or who I really wanted to be for the rest of my life. Yes, I was engaged in it. Yes, I've done it. However, take the advice of somebody who's been through it, that's going to make it to the other side, to the free world, that ultimately had a life sentence from the bad decisions and the mistakes that he made as a child. Because if I could give my story to the children now and help them not make those same mistakes and enter into that same lifestyle, then they'll have a better chance of succeeding and being pillars of their community instead of coming into prison, filling these cells up, and ultimately trying for the rest of their life to get out of prison again. So if you take my story and a lot of these fellas' stories as truth, as fact, then you can make it. You know, you just have to give yourself a chance. You have to have that confidence. And I say that to say, um, I've been in Calipatria since the year of 2008. My brother arrived here in 2009, my real baby brother, my youngest brother, and we've been cellmates for 15 years. And the administration has worked their way to always keep us together.
Nice.
So we've saw a lot of COs that were rookies become sergeants, become lieutenants, become captains, become associate wardens. And as we watched them change in their ranks of going up, they watched us change into our rehabilitation. And it feels good to be where you don't have to look over your shoulder when I'm walking behind you because you know I pose no threat any longer.
That's amazing.
So I could be amongst a normal community because I have ultimately changed that concept of who I was. And that's what I want to spread to the youth.
So
You know, just
incredible.
give back to them and let them know that they have a big brother or a big sister who's treads that path.
And they're not alone.
They're not
'Cause
alone.
you need help.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all need help as human beings.
And like you expressing yourself and sharing your story, you're opening a conversation where they could feel it, they could talk about their feelings. You
Yes.
know, sometimes, especially around men, it's hard to speak about feelings. So,
Yes.
so you're giving us a platform or them a platform to be able to be honest and get help and
Yes.
and not be afraid or of what they've done.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm just so grateful for this conversation. I've learned so much, and I just want to know, what are you most looking forward to? You know, I feel like your energy is so strong and bright, and you're excited to teach, and I'm just curious, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to being the change that I want to see in the world because I believe in love and compassion now. I don't believe in hate and destruction no more. And just if I could help the next person, I'm going to help them. I facilitate a parole board class here that was started by previous lifers that's ultimately ran by the counselor CC2 Alacone. And I check in with them to let him know our progress. But when I sit down with these fellas, I believe that this was part of my purpose before I went home because since I've been working with these individuals, 4 individuals have been found suitable for parole. And I take my time to work with them, share my story, go through the things that I've been through. So I just want to continue to be of service. And if my purpose is to help people for the rest of my life, which I think it is, that's what I want to do. But I'm looking to get out, go to transitional housing, go back to school, get my bachelor's degree, switch it over to psychology, and ultimately become a counselor in the Riverside County juvenile halls and work with the youth and show them the way. And I'd want to do that because I had an uncle who he became a Riverside County probation 2 officer. And he did it because me and my youngest brother were lifers in prison. And he felt like he waited not to step in and help us change our lives. So he became that to help the other youth. And he used our stories in the juvenile system to, hey, you guys want to be tough? You guys want to be this? You want to be that? Look at my nephews. They're both serving life. They're brothers. And the way they're sentenced, they may never come home. But today, rehabilitation, it's possible. Anything's possible, but you have to take it serious and you can't say, oh, I'm going to change this, but not this. And that's one thing I come to understand with myself. Until I fully made that transformation, I understood that the California Parole Board will never let me out of prison. And I feel and I know within my heart I've arrived.
I truly believe that you're going to make a huge difference in so many people's lives
Thank you.
while you're here and when you get out of here. So thank you so much for sharing your story
Yep.
and your time. That was really beautiful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Roosevelt.
All right, thank you.